everyone, thank you for tuning in to another video. A little bit of a change of scenery, brighter environment this week. We know that housing, affordability, and immigration have been in the forefront of the media in the past couple of years. So this week's video is going to be on our federal government's announcement to shrink immigration numbers and more specifically target the amount of non-permanent residents who are entering the country in hopes to fix this housing crisis that we have. So we'll be getting into some numbers about non-permanent residents versus permanent residents, some immigration numbers in Canada versus the US, and if this announcement will actually do anything for our quote-unquote housing crisis. So let's get into some data. As mentioned, Mark Miller, the immigration minister for the Liberal government, has decided to put a cap for the first time ever on NPRs, non-permanent residents, to try and shrink Canada's immigration over the next 3 years. Currently, NPRs make up 6.2% of Canada's population in 2023. They want to get that down to 5% by 2027. So that is roughly a 19% decline in NPRs. Canada's population grew by 3.2% over the past year, increasing 1.2 million people approximately. To contrast that with our neighbors to the border of the south of us, US, they have about 10 times the population of Canada and grew by 1.6 million people last year. So if we put that in contrast with the US, we're growing at a rate of about 10 times what the US is growing. And obviously most of this is immigration. Out of our 1.2 million people that we gained in 2023, about 800,000 of those were non-permanent residents or NPRs. So in order for Canada to meet this target of having no more than 5% of NPRs, we need to drastically decrease the amount of non-permanent residents we have in the country. Now, this is going to have impacts obviously on the economy and on the housing market, more specifically the rental market, because the economy, obviously these people, even though they're not permanent residents, they're working, they're contributing to the economy, they're buying things, and then on the rental side, they're renting places and they're taking up some of that supply and some of that stock that would normally go to other people who aren't in the country. Now, we know that they can't buy, non-permanent residents can't buy because of the foreign buyer ban. Obviously, there's exemptions to this in smaller cities for recreational property, for commercial property, but for the most part, residential property is not permitted to be purchased by non-permanent residents, with a few stipulations and rules around that. So mostly this is impacting the rental market. And also, if we're looking at Canada's GDP, it's been for 6 straight quarters at a net decline per capita. So if we're not bringing in all of these people to work and contribute to the economy who are non-permanent residents, we may see a pretty drastic effect on our economy. So how does Canada putting a cap on NPRs and having less NPRs in the country affect shelter inflation, affect the housing market, affect the rental market? Well, it's mostly going to have effect on the rental market because, as we know, non-permanent residents aren't permitted to buy residential property in Canada, except with a few exemptions. So these people are mostly renting. And if we take Belleville, for instance, as an example for a market that we see NPRs in, attending Loyalist College, or any other city in Ontario that has a college that has been recruiting international students, most of these people are non-permanent residents and most of them are renting. And most of these cities haven't kept up with the rental demand for these people coming in. So we've had more demand than supply, which puts pressure on prices going up. So if we hit these NPR targets and reduce the amount of international students, reduce the amount of non-permanent residents, the economics would say that rent prices are going to stop accelerating at such a fast rate as they were. So if we look at the last inflation data, rent prices increased 7.9%. So they're still increasing extremely fast and at quite a high rate. So I don't necessarily think rent prices are going to decline, but definitely if these systems are put in place, we could see rent prices definitely not increase at the rate they are now. On another note, this may put some developers at risk who are doing purpose-built rental developments. Not so much in our markets, Belleville, Queen West, we're like tertiary markets here, but in bigger city centers like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, a lot of developers have kind of switched gears and gone into the purpose-built rental market because condos are harder to pre-sell. They've been getting government incentives, CMHC financing to do these purpose-built rentals to create more housing for people to rent. So the thought is here that maybe by completion of their building, their pro forma, which reflects these certain rents, aren't going to be the rents anymore because rents won't accelerate at the pace they have been. So some of these projects may not work out. Like I said, that's not going to be the case here because there's no purpose-built rental projects going on, no big ones anyways that are done by big developers. So it's mostly mom and pop landlords, again, duplex, triplex, single family homes that are being leased out. But the pressure on the rental market for renters will likely come down and will be in more of a balanced market. That's a wrap on this quick video of the federal government's announcement to cap NPRs and ease immigration over the next 3 years. Now, for the positive impacts that this may have, that they're saying it may have, there's also going to be negative impacts, obviously, like the economy slowing because we're not adding as many people to contribute to the economy. So hopefully you found this video informative. Obviously, there are way more things that come into play and factors that come into play than what I talked about today, but just a quick thought on what will happen to the rental market and what will happen on shelter inflation costs. So as always, hopefully you found this video informative and stay tuned next week for a new video.